Good morning, class. This is Dr. Aaron Oberst, your instructor for Bio 107 lecture, and this is going to be our debut lecture. All right, what I'm going to try to do in these voice-threaded lectures is to give you an overview, maybe not go so much into detail, give you guys the meat and potatoes of what I expect you to know relative to the information, and give you a sense of what will be testable, of course. To my right, you can hear my dog Sophie, or Momo, panting a little bit. She's decided to accompany me on this lecture, do a little guest lecture. So if you hear that, don't be discouraged. Be motivated about it. Introduction to Human Anatomy and Physiology. Okay, anatomy and physiology defined: it is the study of the relationship between structure and function. Here we've got a sprinter lining up on the starting blocks, and we know that we have some familiarity with what lies beneath our skin. So we know we've got bones and muscles and tendons and ligaments and the brain and skin and you name it, all these different parts of our body, and each of these parts has a function. And the way that a bone, for instance, looking at this guy's or gal's arm bone or humerus, as we will learn soon, the humerus is shaped a certain way. Its structure is such that it permits a rigid function, something to provide support, something for muscles to attach to, etc. So, relationship between structure and function. So why would you want to take this class, Bio 107, Anatomy and Physiology 1? To me, it makes sense to understand what you're made of. Okay, we're all going to be within these shells, so to speak, for hopefully 80 years plus or minus. So it'd be pretty cool if we learned about our bodies and how they work. Also, it's helpful to understand when you understand how things work, you can better understand when things are going wrong. Anatomy and physiology it's also going to be a foundational course. You're going to see this information again and again and again. I know that a lot of people, as a student myself, I was always asking, hey, am I ever going to use this information? Am I ever going to use organic chemistry or physics? And in some cases, honestly, I've found the answer to that is no. But in the case of anatomy and physiology, you're in this human form for 60 more years. Get used to it, get to know about it, and so you can manipulate it, change it to your liking over time. So A&P is a foundation for further studies. It's also one of the most ancient branches of science. This drawing over here, this sketch, was made by a guy named Andreas Vesalius, and he was forever cutting up living things and looking at their parts and then trying to figure out how they worked. So thank dudes like him for broadening our horizons. When I say anatomy, I want you to think structure. Anatomy is the structure of the body. So here we've got a ball and socket joint. We all have two of these. This is your hip joint, or actually the top of your femur bone. Here's the ball, and that'll fit neatly into a socket up top here. If we look inside the bony structure, we can see that there's lighter and darker areas that are basically different concentrations of bone. And then if we go in the back, we have a computer model with lines moving in different orientations. And these lines, the structure of this bone being laid down within the femur, this hip joint, it's going to resist forces, and it's going to make this bone and this part of the body one of the strongest areas that we have in our anatomy. So the structure, or how this bone is made, is going to dictate its function. In this case, bony support system. So if anatomy is structure, Physiology is function. Here we've zoomed into that bony region, and we've got something called the osteon. This is basically on a microscopic level what bone looks like, as we're going to see in the lab. So the functional unit of bone is this osteon, and then within the osteon, these like little black hole looking things you see, we've got dashes around them. These are called osteocytes, and these are bone cells. So this is how, on a microscopic level, the bone is designed. Is what it looks like, and that's how it lays down calcium and becomes strong and supports us, allows us to not have spaghetti bones. Hey, we're going to be I'm already talking in foreign tongues a little bit here. There's medical terminology is a class that some of you will take, all of you will experience if you're getting into science and or nursing, medicine, whatever you want to do, whatever your pursuits are. If it's a health-related discipline, you got to get used to this new language. So we're in an A&P, we're starting that. We're a lot of our terms are derived from Latin, and you'll see an example of some of them here. So the language is called Terminologia Anatomica. I don't care if you remember that necessarily, but just remember and accept the fact that you need to become multilingual and speak the language of A&P. This is going to be a theme that you're going to experience over and over again in science and in anatomy especially. All right, there's a hierarchy of structure. So I'm going to show you a video later that is, in my opinion, truly awesome. It shows things from microscopic all the way to macroscopic. Micro being things that are we can't see with the naked eye, and then macroscopic, some of the largest things that are even hard to comprehend. So at different ends of this scale, we've got structure and function happening. Here we can see as we follow this graphic counterclockwise, we've got what are these? These are atoms. These are the smallest building blocks of life that we routinely study. And a group of atoms is called a molecule, and a group of molecules is called an organelle in this case. And a group of organelles is called, together, is a cell. And then a bunch of cells are a tissue, and a bunch of tissues will make an organ, such as the heart in this case. And then a bunch of organs working together is the system. So, say it, know it, understand it. Chemistry, cell, tissue, organ, system. You have to remember that there's a hierarchical model and for anatomy and physiology, and this is the building blocks. These are the building blocks of life, essentially. And we're going to study these. It's important for us to look at anatomy and physiology on all these levels so that we can fully understand. And we can't just take a look at a muscle that we dissect out of a cat, for instance, a cat's bicep muscle, and say, oh, that's what a muscle is. You zoom in, you see all kinds of cool little structures, and you'll be able to understand, wow, this is why it works this way. This is why it's designed with this particular structure. So we talked about macro anatomy. That's gross anatomy. That's something that we can see with the naked eye. And a long time ago, but not that long ago, at the foundations of medicine and science, we basically cut dead things up and looked at them, studied them together. And how interesting is it that, here these individuals are standing around this cadaver, and that's what we call a body that we dissect, a deceased person, essentially. And they're learning by doing. They're getting in there. And so that's where the laboratory component comes in with this course. It's very important. We can see gross anatomy, and dissections, as I stated, are going to be the foundation of our studies here. And that's what draws people in and keeps them interested. Microscopic anatomy is too small for us to see with the naked eye, so we use technology. And I'm going to show you a cool gizmo that I got from the National Academy of Sciences down in Philadelphia. It's actually a cell phone microscope that allows you to examine the microscopic world. It's totally awesome. Of course, in the lab we'll be looking at different structures, and you'll become very adept at the use of microscopes. Study A&P. So there's different levels of anatomy, physiology that we would study from. So somebody, maybe an anatomist that focuses on the cell, really scrutinizes the cell for its structure and function, that's called cytology. And if you're studying tissues or a group of cells, that's called histology. We're going to be doing a lot of histological studies in lab. And then some other docs will study, and researchers will study regional anatomy, just a particular part of the body. And there are other areas of study, how things develop, from zygote into a fetus, into a human being walking, talking. And then there's clinical anatomy, or when we dissect things and try to understand how they cause disease, how diseases evolve. So we can also test various things. So here's an example of a dude. Obviously, he's a stud. He's in shape. And this lady's checking out. It looks like she's trying to find a happy medium between checking him out and liking his style, and also maintaining some sort of scientific decorum. So I think she's into him. So physiology, or how things function, we can study it. This guy's, we're checking basically how well he can oxygenate his tissues as he's an athlete. So we can test it, and a lot of times we will do human experiments when we have the opportunity. But of course, a lot of our work has been done with the animal model, and so we basically raise and torture. There's entire industries based around the raising and torturing of animals, and to try to learn from them. So it's a balance that we have to strike there, and a great deal of benefit has come from that, but pretty nasty too. Pathophysiology is when functional changes accompany disease. We're going to look at these things, how anatomy and physiology will impact disease. And so at this point, I would ask you why you're here. What do you want to get out of this course? Why are you taking it? Is this a prerequisite? Is this an interest for you? I'll tell you right now, I love anatomy and physiology. That's why I'm teaching it. All right. So it's going to be essential for you to understand this information. I want to make it as interesting as humanly possible for you, so that this is something you take with you and can help other people with. That's the idea. Once again, revisiting the concept of the hierarchy of structure and function. Atoms, a group of atoms makes a molecule, group of molecules makes an organelle and a cell. A bunch of cells is going to be a tissue, and we often refer to that as a fabric, kind of like the fabric of the body, tissues. And then a group of tissues would be an organ, group of organs a system, and then we've got an organism, or an actual person. So I would anticipate a test question, or a couple of test questions on that order of things, anatomical order. My kid's into Legos, so here's a pretty cool Lego that I would definitely pull off the shelf, although they're in the hundreds of dollars these days. I don't know how that happened. But anatomy physiology is kind of like Legos. We're putting little pieces of things together, and a bunch of little pieces, as they fit in just right, we can build something beautiful. And so it's truly incredible how the human body its structure complements its function. And this cool little Lego guy, maybe we'll pick him up for class and check him out, or her. Moving on to organization of A&P, the anatomical position. It's really pretty simple, and we're going to expect you to understand it fully. You're going to be standing, the subject is going to be standing erect, and they're going to be facing forward, feet are pointed forward, slightly apart, arms at the sides, and then you're going to bring your palms forward. So your pinkies are going to be in towards your body, and your thumb outboard. All right. and that is anatomical position. This is where the position that we study anatomy from. So if we were going to reference a part of the body, we would always consider it in anatomical position. So know it. And there are different terms, as we mentioned earlier, the language of anatomy. Your thumb is your pollex, and your wrist is your carpus. And if there's something in the midsection, it's not your belly, it's your abdomen. And your pes is your foot. Your cranium is your skull. Your axilla is your armpit. So you need to understand. I'd take a look at this this image right here, and you need to know every single one of these so that you can understand that. There's a test question on that. The tarsus. That's what is the ankle is referred to in using anatomical terminology. The ankle is referred to as blank, and the correct answer would be tarsus. Your big toe would be your hallux. So we need to know our way around our body from anatomical position, as stated. So when something, some examples are, if we're talking about your leg, your kneecap would be closer to your midline. So your kneecap would be proximal to your foot. Your head is superior in position. Of course, we know right and left. If our belly button, that's median, right in this on the center line of the body, and anything to the side of that would be lateral. Right? So we need to understand the relationship of these structures relative to one another. And there are different planes that we refer to as well. And these are 3D terms used to describe the relationship among structures. When something is sagittal, it's like you're taking a lightsaber from Star Wars, right? Any sci-fi geeks out there? No? Okay. Hey, you're going to take a lightsaber and you're going to slice Darth Vader straight down from the tip of his helmet, superior, all the way down between his legs, and you're going to cut him in two halves, all right? Cut him in half there. That would be the sagittal plane. That's what you see in purple. And if we were going to cut him off of the waist, that would be the transverse or horizontal plane. And if we were going to cut him along this blue plane here, that's the frontal thing. That would basically be front and back. If we gave him an anterior and posterior slice straight down, his back would fall backward, and his face would fall to the ground. Because he's evil. There are some body cavities as well. All right, you see those things in red over here, mostly. And these are basically spaces where we take different organs of the body, different parts of the anatomy, and we put them together within the body. So that it kind of compartmentalizes things, and it protects them and organizes them, and it also has a degree of shock absorption to it. Organs tend to be hollow, so they're fairly light. They squeeze in there, they can move around. Your lungs can expand as you inhale oxygen, gas exchange happens, and then you exhale. They shrink and your heart beats. And so it's got room to move, but it's also stuck in this, not stuck, but positioned within this cavity. And so the cavities offer them stability and mobility. We've got two cavities here that we're going to discuss. Mostly, there's the ventral body cavity here, which is in red, and then the dorsal. So ventral means front, basically, and dorsal means back. So two body cavities, ventral and dorsal. And there are even breakdowns of those, as we will discuss. The dorsal body cavity, there's the cranial cavity and the spinal cavity. So this is basically where as we will learn, we call refer to this as the central nervous system, the brain, and the spinal cord. So, the spinal cavity is going to extend from the cranial cavity up in the brain, and then the brain's like a little tail, and that's the spinal cord. The cranial and spinal cavities. Pretty simple right there. And then there's the ventral body cavity, and this is where most of our guts or our organs are. Up above, we've got the thoracic part of the ventral body cavity, or the chest. So beneath our ribs here, we've got the heart and the lungs and the diaphragm and the thyroid and different blood vessels that are coming through there. Below, we've got your guts. Down here, we've got your intestines and your liver and your stomach, spleen, all that stuff. Breaking it down further, the thoracic cavity, okay, it's in the superior aspect of the ventral body cavity, or you can refer to as the VBC, the ventral body cavity. There are even smaller cavities within the thoracic cavity. We've got the pulmonary cavities and the pericardial cavity. The cardium is our heart, so pericardial is going to be everything around the heart and everything around it. So we've got two lungs, we've got the heart in the middle, we've got some arteries and veins, or the great vessels as we refer to them, because they're big, in thoracic cavity. And below that, as we're going to discuss, we've got everything else. In the abdominopelvic cavity. See, the abdomen and the pelvis, they just combine those two words. The abdominopelvic cavity, it's in the lower portion of the VBC. Like I said, it's got the rest of your stuff in there. It's a who's who of organs, such as the stomach, liver, kidneys, spleens, your intestines, small and large, and your reproductive organs are found in the abdominopelvic cavity. This is testable information. It's very important. And figures A and B, this gentleman here, we've got some sections that we've carved out within his anatomy, talking about those cavities. Here we've got the gentleman in anatomical position, and in figure A, we've got broken down into 4 quadrants, and this is what you'll find is used mostly when we refer to anatomy. It'll be this one. It's pretty simple. There's a right upper quadrant, left upper quadrant, right lower quadrant, and left lower quadrant, as in the appendix is located in the right lower quadrant, or the stomach is located in the left upper quadrant. So that's the simplest one. And then figure B, and we're going to be asking you some questions on this, so it's important that you know it, and it's the more difficult one, of course. We've got 9 quadrants here, or not quadrants, we've got 9 sections. So I like to go to the center first. We've got the umbilical region, and that's right by the belly button. In our terminology, we've got the belly button is referred to as the umbilicus, and above that is the epi, or above the gastric region. So umbilical region, above that is epigastric, below that is hypogastric, and then we've got some regions down to the left, or top and bottom of that. The right hypochondriac, left, right iliac, and left iliac. Iliac is kind of like the hip. So you need to memorize these, and you need to understand the structures that are within them. I might say, well, as before, which quadrant would you identify the liver as being in? And you'd say, oh, I know that's on the right side, up high, so right upper quadrant, right? Or, you know, if I was going to say, well, your bladder is located, your urinary bladder is located in which anatomical region, you'd say, there'd be some choices. The hypogastric region would be the correct answer. Know it. Membranes, all right, are cool. Whenever there is an organ, or whenever there's an anatomical structure that's moving around, such as the heart that's beating 60 to 100 beats per minute within our mediastinum, or our ventral body cavity, superior aspect of it right now. Whenever organs are moving around, whenever we have a meal and our intestines are starting to have a little peristalsis and they're churning food within them, there's got to be a membrane, and these membranes provide cushion, and they provide some lubrication around that anatomical structure. But beating hard is a great example of that. So it reduces friction allows the organs to slide around one another. You can look at this. This is a great analogy here. It's like you took a balloon that was deflated to a degree, and you stuck your hand in it. It would conform to your hand. You stick your hand in it, and it kind of goes around the surface of your hand, and your hand is enveloped within it, and it cushions it. And so that's kind of like your heart. And there are different parts of membranes. So we've got serous membranes, and serous membranes, they produce that lubricating fluid. It's like WD-40 for organs. Parietal is like something that a membrane that is along a body wall. So that's like on the outside of the membrane. And then visceral is something that is a membrane that is right on top of the organ. So as you can see, we've got these, all that is labeled right up here. The visceral pericardium is the membrane that goes right on the surface of the heart. And then the parietal pericardium is the one that's on the outside. Check it out for our chapter summary here, our first chapter within Marib. I want you to understand that anatomy and physiology is the relationship between structure and function. Right? And you have to be a speaker of a new language. If you're not multilingual already, check it out. You will be. You must be. And that there is a hierarchy of structure and function, the organization of anatomy and physiology, and that we must study structures both on a microscopic level and on a macroscopic level. That order is in the order of chemistry, cell, tissue, organ, system. A group of atoms is going to make a molecule. A group of molecules is going to make a cell. A group of cells is going to make a tissue. A group of tissue is going to make a. I want you to remember it just like that, and be able to place these items in order. I want you to understand the basics of body cavities. The two body cavities being the ventral and dorsal body cavities, and their purpose, how their structure is going to result in a function that compartmentalizes and protects our organs. And I want you to understand, I want you to enjoy this class, okay? Science is about being inquisitive. It's about wondering about things and trying to figure out how they work. The fact of the matter is, in 500 years, in the last several hundred years, we've made some incredible developments in science. We know a lot about the world in which we live. We've studied it. We've taken much of the guesswork out of it. So I want you to, as a result of this class, first of all, it's like an owner's manual for your body. I want you to understand more about it. I want you to feel comfortable within your own skin. I want you to ask questions, and I want you to go forth and do great things in whatever field is your choosing, your forte. I'm going to help you at every turn. All right? This is your chapter summary. This is your first lecture. Digest this information and ask questions. I'll see you guys on Thursday. I'm looking forward to it. Stay motivated.